Hmm? Oh, hi Nick. Yeah, I'm just looking at your latest video on Tesla that again you did without me. Okay, never mind. We'll get on to another subject today. Just before we do so, I think it's time for a quick word from our sponsor, as in here's the disclaimer. So, Nick, yesterday, Thursday, we saw just before market open a profit warning from Walmart, obviously connected with the conversation of the day, tariffs, and of course, what the impact can be on their business. So the market didn't like it initially, but I'd have to say that both the S&P and Nasdaq managed to climb off their lows, and it wasn't a bad close. Wasn't a bad close. I was also potentially thinking about a trade on Microsoft. A bullish trade on Microsoft. So I want to get your thoughts on that as well, because quite recently in our conversations, you seem to be turning slightly less bearish. And I just wanted to ask the question, why?
Okay, well, that's a lot to try and remember. Walmart, right? Walmart. Well, what is Walmart? It's consumer. And what are tariffs? Tariffs are a tax on consumers because at the end of the day, the problems in the US that Trump is trying to fix are not to get the consumer to spend more, because that's certainly never been a problem in the US, but rather to get the producers more incentive to produce in the US rather than overseas. And so that's where tariffs come in. So it really doesn't surprise me that Walmart are just using this as a forum to say that obviously tariffs are going to hurt their business. Just the CEO basically saying to everybody, well, look, if I don't make as much money as I did last year, it's his fault, right? So that's really Walmart. We can talk about tariffs on another day because it is a much more intense conversation with currencies and the like and deficits. But Microsoft, yeah, and what my thoughts about the overall market. I did this, or we did this conversation about Apple, the update we did on Apple and Nvidia and the S&P. We said, look, two options, as usual, could go up or it could go down. And the point was, if it was going to go down, then I really wanted it to go down pretty damn soon, because if it was going to go down, it was going to go down pretty fast, and there was no reason for prices to be drifting higher. And I kind of gave a level, a Fibonacci level on Apple and said, look, I really don't want to see Apple above this 78.6% retracement, and definitely not above 250. Well, what did it do? Apple went above the 78.6% and failed to break 250. So we're again in a kind of, really, we want this market to show its direction pretty quickly. But again, as it looks as though the market it wants to go up, then I would say, okay, let's start to look at trades which are bullish, and therefore that's why I looked at the Tesla thing, because Tesla had this certain pattern that gave it more likelihood that it was going to bounce. And somebody asked one of our listeners, well, what about the bear count? Well, good point. But on triangles, remember the same level I mentioned on Tesla is around 325. Don't want to see prices below that. If it does get below that, we're at 350 today. 325 is not far off in the greater scheme of things. If it does break below that, then I think, certainly all bets are off for a near-term bullish move for Tesla. And I'll update the chart. But Microsoft, yeah, well, we got another triangle, dare I say it. So, we're not fully at the point where this thing is likely, if it is a triangle, to explode higher. We're sort of still halfway through that triangle, but nevertheless, we're at fairly critical support as well on Microsoft. Shall I share a chart and then explain to you what I mean? The motive wave chart. And here we are, and here is that triangle. That triangle, basically, if you can see it where I've labeled 3, is the start of the triangle. And then we've had wave A, wave B, and I think we're in wave C. And normally, I would say an Elliott wave in triangles, if it is a triangle, I don't really know. But let's just say, guessing at the moment that it is a triangle, that wave C would travel roughly 61% of wave A. And at the moment, C has traveled only 50%. So, I think it's close. So maybe there is some more downside first. But if it is a wave C, and as I say, there is some support at this level. If you let's try and draw one of these things, I'm not sure if it will work, but somewhere around here, you can see, there's a low here, there's a low here, there's a low here, and here we are again. So there is good support for Microsoft. So, if anything, that perhaps this is the level where wave C will bounce and head towards wave D. Doesn't have to be a wave C. It could just be some kind of more complex, wave one, wave two, wave one, wave two pattern. But at the moment, I'm still favoring the triangle because it just looks too much of a sideways price action. So, where would the best time to be bullish on something like this, if it is a triangle, and that will be, the end of wave E. But here we are in wave C. So if you're going to get a bounce, you might get a bounce recovery to around 440 or thereabouts. That's enough for a good trade. I mean, we were at 415 or so when you were talking about it yesterday, and 440 is quite a good bounce recovery. So, that might be worth a look. But as I say, for a bigger move, I would be looking for to see if this is a triangle and look at that point at wave E here. So still some time to go, maybe another month before the bigger triangle completes. But nevertheless, as I say, we're at support. The pattern on the way down at the moment is still three waves. I mean, obviously, we won't know until we break up here. But at the moment, there's every reason for Microsoft to pause the move down here. And again, I mean, you don't want to see a new low, basically. So 404 was the low. If you're going to take a bullish bet, that's probably the level where I would say, no, something else is going on here. But, my first look on Microsoft, we're still in this sideways pattern for the market. Maybe we get a bigger bounce here. Maybe the S&P starts to move higher towards the 6,200 level. We might get a small pullback first, but I think, it feels like, again, that the market does want to head higher. So Microsoft, kind of like it. We've had a decent pullback. We're at support. It could be a triangle. Maybe it's wave C. We won't really know until sort of a bit more price action has developed in the triangle. So it is very premature to call it. And obviously, as you see here, not only do we have big support from the price action here, but you see these dotted lines that I've got on my chart. If you're hoping to see them red and blue, the blue is the 200-day and the red is the 55-day EMA. So that is going to be resistance, and that comes in at around the 420 level. Break above there, it could get interesting.
Yeah, I mean, okay, confession time. And thank God you've just said what you've said. I have put on a little trade here, a little bullish trade here. I put a bull debit spread here, a call debit spread. I'm giving myself a little bit of time, but it's still fairly short term. I'm looking at the 21st of March expiry. Yeah, I think, and I am hoping, given what you've just said, you've kind of confirmed my suspicions that we might get a little bit of a blip up. I mean, yeah, we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I'll keep a tight eye on that. But the overall market, any thoughts on the overall market? I mean, you're still, as I say, thinking we might have some higher ground perhaps in the S&P?
Yeah, I mean, shall I quickly share an S&P chart, and then maybe what I just said becomes a little bit clearer. So this is the S&P as I see it, and this is the more positive view on the S&P than the one I previously gave, where I said, originally down to 5.2 and then maybe down to 5.6, and now it looks like we're going to go up first before that. But anyway, what do I see here? Here where I've labeled wave four, Roman numeral wave four, we went up in what looks like fairly impulsive price action. And what we did on the way down looks like three waves. All right. Now, two, as always, possibilities here. One is that this, which I've labeled wave two, isn't finished or will finish here. Why do I say that? Because what it would look like this. So you see three waves down. At the moment, we got three waves up. Well, that's not good, not good. And then it could, forms what's called in Elliott Wave a flat pattern, an irregular flat, where wave A of the pattern is here, wave B of the pattern goes slightly above, breaks the high, gets people excited about breakout, and then forms a low, but not down towards where we were. So somewhere just below this low here, 5,900, something like that. Why is that plausible? Well, if you look at the momentum here on the RSI, which I've got here in purple, it's lost a little bit of momentum. So there's every chance that we might sort of make another push down before going up first. I mean, that is sort of, we have to respect that, and that's quite possible. The point about the overall market is that whilst, the pattern here of bullish up, three waves, correction just doesn't look finished. And therefore, you kind of get the feeling that it is heading towards this 6,200 at least. But I must say, sort of both from a macro perspective and from a technical perspective, this is really, you're bobbing and weaving, dodging, and you're ducking and diving, as it were, because there's so many squiggles left and right. I don't think this is the market environment for that big bet. I don't think this is the market environment for jumping on a trade. Certainly not in the indices, but in some of these underlying stocks, we're seeing some big moves left and right. Yeah, so you're seeing some stocks sort of gapping 10% up and some stocks gapping 10% down. So there's certainly some volatility in the individual stocks, but in the underlying itself, it looks really choppy. So I'm staying away from the likes of the S&P and looking at, again, I'm not looking at Apple at the moment necessarily, in Nvidia. Microsoft looks interesting. Tesla's on my watch list, as you know, if you've just finished the video. And I'm looking at some of the more esoteric things, but not ready to pull the trigger on anything big.
Hmm. Well, I mean that certainly makes a lot of sense there. And the other encouraging thing I've found, and it backs up your comments just now, we have seen a little bit more breadth into these indices. I mean, we've seen moves on the indices without the kind of the added impetus of the Mag 7 at times, and we're seeing this, which is good. I mean, that's kind of maybe we don't have to focus just purely on the indices. We can be looking at some of these other names because it looks like they are perhaps, getting involved in the party. So that again, I find relatively encouraging. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that, Nick. That's a nice conversation to be involved in. Of course, not being involved in the Tesla, but I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter. Yeah, just make sure you include me in the next one. That's it for today, or that's it for today's recording. It's a nice brief one, I hope, just to get some ideas out there just before the weekend. Have a great weekend as always, and no doubt we'll be back online next week, one or two times perhaps, whenever we think there's something interesting to talk about. Any last words, Nick?
If you like the video, like and share.
Of course, like and share, and make sure you're subscribing as well so you get notified of all of the new content that ggets put up there for you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Adios.